Okay, Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
You know what? I thought you compiled a tremendous rapid fire lineup today, and I have been looking forward to this. So,
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Glad to hear that. So, this slipped through the cracks when Notre Dame released its 2025 home game times earlier this week. The October 4th game against Boise State was originally slated to be televised only on Peacock. But then, if you look at the release that Notre Dame sent out this week, it is now going to be broadcast on NBC, the Notre Dame Boise State game, while the October 11th game between Notre Dame and NC State is going to be the Peacock only game now. So Boise State, broadcast TV on NBC, NC State, the Peacock only streaming game. Scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like this?
so scale of 1 to 10 on this question. I would say, if I didn't have a wedding going on and, I plan to heavily partake in the Boise State experience, then I would be a 10 out of 10 because I want the better game to be on NBC and the lesser value game to be on Peacock at the end of the day. But I kind of almost have to plead the fifth on this one and just kind of say, you know what, like it doesn't really matter to me because that's the day I'm getting married. So whether or not Boise State was on NBC, ABC, Peacock, whatever, CBS, it wouldn't have mattered to me. At the end of the day,
I think the people in Boise are going to be very happy about this. We can start with that. The people out west are going to be very happy about this. I mean, this is two college football playoff teams from last year who are going to be playing the first weekend of October. So I think a lot of people are going to be a lot happier. Like I would think NBC, the fact that they switched it to NBC, they probably, they had a little buyer's remorse maybe, or seller's remorse, or whatever it is. And they figured, you know what? It benefits us to have this game on NBC. Now, to your point, I am Tenzin says, just get it annulled. To your point, this is a 10 out of 10 from my perspective. Okay. But it's because of the reason you said.
Oh, because you're going to rewatch it and you'd rather listen on NBC.
Well, it's all the same broadcast crew, but it's easier. I can watch this game in an hour on my DVR, whereas if I had to come back home the next day and go to the Peacock archive, it's going to take me, I'm not going to save that much time because the horrible fast forward function.
It's one of those where it gets really fast all of a sudden.
Well, the streamer, you can't control the forward and back on the streamer, the way you can on the regular DVR. Like I can go when I can watch the play, and then if I want to, I can watch it again, but then I can also just do like a one-time forward, like now they're up at the line of scrimmage for the next play. So I can cut out all the downtime. And then obviously commercial breaks, I can whiz right past. Halftime, I can whiz right past. I can literally watch a football game in an hour when I've got my DVR and my DVR control. Can't do that when we're watching the streamer archive video. It's just not good functionality on that remote. So I'm very happy about this, since I will be at somebody's wedding on October 4th during this game.
Somebody's.
But then I will come home the next day and I'll be able to power right through and watch the game in short time. So I'm very happy about that. Fill in the blank. Besides the quarterbacks and Jeremiah Love, the Irish offensive player you have the most confidence in this season is blank.
Besides quarterbacks and Jeremiah Love, the offensive player that I'm going to have the most confidence in is going to be Jaden Greathouse, actually. And the reason why I'm going to say Jaden Greathouse is I know I've been a heavy criticism of him, but I think in terms of someone who has kind of built up for the moment, who is building off of last year, who understands the moment for where this offense needs to go in order to kind of unlock the next level. This was going to be a wide receiver for me no matter what, because that's what's going to take this offense to the next level. And so I don't want a guy who's here for 1 year as a grad transfer in Malachi Fields. Like I want Jaden Greathouse, the guy who's kind of been working up to this, a career Notre Dame guy, someone who started to show up in the big time games in the playoffs last season. He has to continue that production. I think he's going to. And having CJ Carr back there, getting him the ball is definitely going to help.
Ooh, I like that we've got some different answers.
I wanted to say Price, but I think Price is going to take his game to the next level. But like I felt like that was cheating a little bit because I know the running back room is just going to be solid all around.
See, like I am Tenzin, son of Aang, going all in on Micah Gilbert. Like to say that that's the guy you're most confident in, like a guy who hasn't done anything yet. That's tough for me. Jadarian Price's DJ's answer, and I think that is a fully suitable answer because you're not going out on much of a limb, because the question is not like who's the dark horse, to be a really good player this year. The question is, who do you have the most confidence in? And Jadarian Price is a really good one as well. But, the other side of that is Jeremiah Love is still going to be the number one guy. Jaden Greathouse is one of the guys who was in my head, but I'm going to go with Charles Jagusah. I've got to say his name right. Charles Jagusah is my guy because we've already seen he can play both left tackle and right guard at a very high level. And like seeing him in just the short glimpses of time that we saw him last year, that's why everyone was so confident in him going into last season before the injury. So I think he's going to head and shoulders. Well, maybe not head and shoulders, because they're going to have some other good offensive linemen as well. Somebody said Shrouth. I think that's a solid answer as well. But I'm going with Jagusah as my guy. Regardless of what position he ends up being, I think he's going to be Notre Dame's best offensive lineman this season.
I was also contemplating, it was either going to be wide receiver or offensive line for me. And Jagusah was on the final two of my list as well. So I'm glad that I didn't say it, so we could each kind of take, someone different, provide a little variety and spice.
Right. Tex ND says could be Raridan. Again, that's a little bit more of a stretch. Like I think Raridan's going to have a good season, but it would be a bit of a stretch for me to say that he is the one that I am most confident in.
I mean, put it like this: Jagusah friggin' missed all of last year, came in during the most important games of the season, and performed. So imagine a healthy, more developed, stronger, another cycle of off season. Like he's gonna be the next guy. When you talk about lineage of offensive linemen at Notre Dame, I think he is the next man up, as they say.
Justin Kane says Fields, and I mean that's another good answer. I think what makes it hard for me to go all in on him right now is we've seen other transfer receivers come through here, and they haven't maybe lived up to what we thought they were going to be. But to be fair, they also haven't had the kind of quarterback who's going to be throwing them the ball this year. And like if it ends up being CJ Carr with his ability to throw guys open and the catch radius and the size and the skill set that Fields has, that's pretty tantalizing, like just thinking about that. But that's also why Jaden Greathouse is a great answer, because of those same things. Fill in the blank. Besides Leonard Moore and Drake Bowen, the Irish defensive player you have the most confidence in this season is blank.
This one was easy. It came to me instantly. There's no second thoughts about this one. It's got to be Adon Shuler. I thought he did a great job last season as, an underclassman at the safety level, opposite of Xavier Watts. Someone who, again, made a lot of big-time plays, I think, when the team needed him most. I never felt like he was a liability out there. I loved his ability to play in coverage. I like the way he comes down and fills alleys. He's super aggressive. He plays relentless. If he can clean up that tackling just a little bit more, probably put on maybe an extra, 5 or 10 pounds of muscle mass to really get in the way of some of these guys, I think he's going to have an even more productive safety season. I think he's going to be kind of the premier safety on the defense. I don't want to say Xavier Watts level, because that's an All-American and a guy with a lot of interceptions, but the blueprint is there. Like he saw what Xavier Watts did. That was his mentor, and hopefully he can kind of, escalate to that level.
Right. Now, just a reminder for everyone who's chiming in, we took Leonard Moore and Drake Bowen off the board, just like we took the quarterbacks and Jeremiah Love off the board for the offense. So the question was, besides Moore and Bowen, the player you have the most confidence in? Because I think if you just said the player you have the most confidence in, everyone's going to say Leonard Moore, right? Maybe you would have said Drake Bowen, which is why I included Drake Bowen on this list as well.
I probably would have went Shuler still, to be honest with you.
Would you?
Yeah.
Shuler is on my short list, and the names that I've seen, I agree with. Like Shuler, Gray, Christian Gray would be my other one. Those would be my first and second runners up. My number one guy, KVA, Kingston Viliamu Asa, another linebacker. I just think that he is going to have a beast of a year this year. What we saw from him last year, and
just itching the surface.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I think that like this is going to be like the linebacker play that I think we're going to see from this team this year between Bowen and KVA to start off with, and then you slip in Sneed and Osbury in there as well. And like who knows?
I think all four of those guys will get drafted by the time it's all said and done.
Right. iBoy Yo says, is he replacing Kaiser? Yeah, it's like the Bowen KVA, like those two guys, whether like one is the Mike, one is the Will, I think it could be fairly interchangeable. Like those two guys are essentially, just gonna, have the bulk of the snaps at the two inside linebacker spots. So that's who I'm going with, is KVA for mine. Yesterday, Jesse, Vince and I predicted USC's over-under win total. Tommy wants you to predict it real quick. Do you have a schedule? Do you want to pull it up?
I got it up. I'm looking at it.
Okay. Do you know what it is first? You're not cheating, right?
No, I'm not cheating.
So go through the games. Georgia Southern.
That's a win.
Who's the next one? I can't think of it off the top.
Well, they have Missouri State as well to start.
Missouri State and Georgia Southern were the
win. So you got 2 wins. Purdue, I think, is a win. 3. Michigan State in the Coliseum, I think, is a win. 4. USC, I'll call, split, so I won't count it. Michigan, I'll call split.
Hold it. USC can't play themselves. What are you talking about?
Sorry, USC, Illinois.
Okay.
Illinois, Michigan, I'll kind of table for now. I don't think they'll beat Notre Dame. I think they'll beat Nebraska and Northwestern. I'll table Iowa. They won't beat Oregon, and they'll beat UCLA. So I think that puts me – I'm going to say their win total – it's either 7.5 or 8.5. I'm going to go with 7.5.
Very well done. It came down to 7.5 or 8.5 for me yesterday. I went with 8.5. I was wrong. The number is 7.5. Well done. Vince had it up at 9.5. I think that's mostly because he thinks that they're just going to dog walk Michigan. So,
yeah, I mean, Michigan, Illinois, Oregon, and Iowa are kind of the 4 games that puts you down to, potentially 8 wins. And then from there, that's kind of where the 7.5 would be. So,
right.
Kind of proud of myself on that one. I was put on the spot and made it happen.
Joe was asking if Jagusah got a medical red shirt because he only played 2 games. So 2 things. 1, you have to apply for a medical red shirt down the road. 2, he's already had a red shirt season. Remember, his freshman season was a red shirt season. So now he's going into his 3rd season at Notre Dame, his junior season. There's no way, because he already has the red shirt season from his freshman year, there's no way he's going to end up being here for 5 years. So like the medical redshirt thing is ultimately not going to matter for Jagusah.
See ya.
But you would still have to apply for it, like at the end anyway, to see if you could get it. But it's just not going to matter for him. Tex Andy, going back to the wedding, he says just play the game during the wedding. Oof. Do you know what time your wedding is going to be? Do you guys have the time decided?
That's a good question. I think it's like early evening, like 4:00.
Oh, okay. So like right in the middle. So there's like not going to be like any eyes on football. Basically.
No, and if you get caught, that's on you. Anyone that gets caught, you could deal with those.
See, I would not do that because, again, I've got a DVR. I can come home and watch the whole thing.
That's what I mean. I would rather not be checking in and then just be able to watch the full game later. Like at some point, it's either I've become all or nothing. I don't like the guy who's on the phone or intermittently, watching, checking the score on ESPN. Just honestly, I mean, if you're at the wedding, just turn your phone off and come back and watch it. Maybe later that evening, the next day, you might see the final score, sure, but for what you do and what we do talking about it, we still have to watch the game in order to analyze what happened. So
Archer 452 says, here's the solution. No fall weddings. I don't know if you're married, Archer, but
it's probably the most popular time to get married.
And not only that, I don't know, in what world do you think the guy has any real say in any of that? Having been married myself and knowing other people who've been married.
So with the counter argument is, no one wants to do an outdoor wedding in the winter. And I'm
sure got married in January. Did you have a choice in that, Archer? That's the question.
And I definitely wasn't going to do it before the season started, aka August, July, or June, because that's just asking for
Didn't want the
amount of sweat. So
that's right. Humidity
was
in the Midwest, not going to happen.
I already run hot.
That's right.
I don't think these people realize how many Notre Dame games I have been to.
At the end of the day, it's one day out of the rest of your life. It's not. It's not going to make or break anything.
And I hate to break it to you, but I'd rather get married than watch a Boise State and Notre Dame football game. I'm just going to say it.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame women's basketball coach Niele Ivey said this week on SportsCenter that Hannah Hidalgo will be the best player in the game and the face of the game this season.
So I'm going to stay young and hip on this, and I'm going to say it's standing on business by Niele Ivey, because at the end of the day, with everything that happened and all the controversy and Olivia Miles, foregoing the draft and then transferring, and, you lost some other players to the portal, and she's just sticking to her guns at the end of the day and going to say, you know what? I'm not worried about this because I still have the best basketball player in the country. And when you have the best basketball player in the country, you stand a chance to win a lot of games and go very far. And so it's almost like she's doubling down on herself and the commitment that she's made to Hannah, and understanding that this is probably, the long-term plan. You just didn't expect these many bumps in the road. Hannah was always going to be the leader of this team and the predominant ball handler, right? And so it was just unfortunate, the timing of Olivia's injuries and trying to integrate them too after that. But it was always still going to be Hannah's team. It's just now there's no more Olivia Miles and Sonia Citron. And so there's going to be more responsibility on Hannah Hidalgo. But when you say I have the best player in the country, then they can handle more workload. They should be able to handle. And I think she's just establishing expectations really at the end of the day, And so these are all conversations that they've probably had, but I like that she's standing on the business and doubling down and saying, you know what, this is what's going to happen.
And I think that, she's definitely, I think that there was already a high level of expectation on Hidalgo, and it's going to be even higher now, but I guarantee you that Hidalgo has the confidence and the mindset that she is the best player in the game. And, I don't know about the face of basketball, but look, Juju Watkins is going to be out for probably at least 90% of the season. If she gets back, it's not going to be until late February or early March, right before the tournament. And quite honestly, just like with Olivia Miles, why would you risk coming back, at that point? But, the point is she's going to be out for the first 4 months of the season. Paige Beckers is gone as well. The mantle goes to Hannah Hidalgo. That's just the way it is. So it's absolutely true that she is going to be the face of women's basketball, because who else? Who are the other options? I can't think of any. Maybe somebody from UConn, whether it's AZ Fudd or whatever. But Hannah Hidalgo is going to be front and center. She's going to be the focal point, and like the way, like I know that they're still planning on making other additions via the transfer portal, and the portal has kind of slowed down over the last few weeks. It's been more or less crickets, but like based on who else is going to be around her, it's like going to be like very Allen Iverson-esque. It's going to be very Caitlin Clark-esque. Like look at what Iowa had with Caitlin Clark. It was Caitlin Clark and a bunch of role players, quite honestly, and to some extent, that's kind of what Notre Dame is going to have, heading into the new season. It is mostly going to be Hannah Hidalgo, and she's going to have to be a huge part of it, and she's going to have to carry them, quite honestly. And you're right, DJ, they will push AZ Fudd on us because she's from UConn, and that's just the way it's going to go. And UConn's also going to be stacked, and she's at the very least going to be the face of UConn, and when they're winning a bunch of games the way they're going to win, that's what you're going to get. So you want to talk some NFL?
Oh yeah.
Actually, I've got one more before NFL. Notre Dame baseball plays game 1 of their last regular season series at Miami tonight. They've won 14 of their last 16 games heading into this weekend. What do they have to do this weekend to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive?
Short and simple. They just need to win the series. They don't need to sweep, and they definitely can't get swept, and they definitely can't lose 2 of 3. They just need to win 2 of 3, take this last series against a quality opponent, and go into the ACC tournament, fist flailing, basically fighting for your life. Because over the last couple of weeks, all I've been seeing is Notre Dame, first 5 out. Notre Dame, first 5 out.
Right.
And so what are you going to do to make a lasting impression these last 2 weeks of the season? This weekend series and the ACC tournament. It starts with winning the series, and then again, it starts with and then it goes into some fist fights into the ACC tournament where you got to win a couple rounds.
Yeah, and let's be honest. The reason that they have stayed on that first 4 out is because of who they played during this stretch. Like you got to give them credit for winning the games, but at the same time, winning that series against Louisville a couple of weeks ago, that's really the only, opponent that they've beaten in this stretch that's going to move the needle at all. They swept a bad Cal team. They swept a bad Stanford team. They swept a bad Bowling Green team last weekend because it was their conference bye weekend. They beat Eastern Michigan as well. They took 2 out of 3 against Louisville. Just exactly what you said is it. They cannot get swept. They cannot just win one game in this series. They've got to win the series. They don't have to sweep the series. They've got to take 2 out of 3. It's a road series. So, there'll be some extra RPI points for that. And then you go into the ACC tournament. You would still be on a considerable roll if you can take 2 out of 3 this weekend against the Hurricanes. And then, you've still got some work to do at the ACC tournament. But again, like the reason they've stayed in that first 4 out rather than bumping up, in spite of the fact that they've won 14 of the last 16, is because vast majority of the teams that they've beaten have just not been good teams. They needed the wins. They're over the 30-win mark now at this point, but you got to win this series against Miami.
It's just really unfortunate because they should have won more games against teams like Boston College.
Yep.
Like they could be in a much better position.
That's a killer right there. Yep. Exactly. And even if you can, like we've talked about before, they won 1 game against Florida State. They won 1 game against Clemson. Those are both 2 really good teams. If you could have just plucked one, like against Wake Forest, just pluck one of those games in those different series against some of the better teams, they'd be in a lot better place right now as well. So we have Vegas odds on NFL teams to make the playoffs after the full release of the NFL schedule last night. 14 teams make the playoffs, and the 14 teams that are considered favorites, according to FanDuel, here they are in order: Buffalo, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Detroit, San Francisco, the LA Rams, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, Houston, Washington, the LA Chargers, Green Bay, and Denver. So if you're going to kick two of those teams out and put two teams in, who would they be?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to do everyone a quick little favor, hopefully.
Uh-oh, you got a screen graphic here?
No. I'm just posting all those teams that you said in the chat. So, because I know, like, me personally, I wouldn't have been able to remember all those teams. And so I'm just putting them in the chat, and I'm going to remove two of these teams. The first one was, I thought, relatively easy. I'm going to remove Washington for now. I think that it's going to come down to them and another NFC East team. So we'll table that discussion. And then the other team that I would remove is Tampa. And I'm replacing Tampa with the Falcons. I think the division is going to come down to them and the Falcons. I thought the Falcons, I think they finished either 9-8 or 8-9 last season. So right at that kind of 500 clip. They had a lot of, turnover at quarterback, young quarterback, but they have a lot of talent, especially on offense. They've reloaded, on defense. And so I think that the Falcons, and they played a lot of close games too, lost a lot of close games last year. So I think they're going to overtake the Buccaneers, and I'm going with the Falcons to win the division this season.
NFL believes in the Falcons. They look at the schedule that the Falcons have, like they're like prime time and that kind of stuff. They're in some of the marquee slots. So the Falcons. So you've got the Falcons in. Who is your other team that's in?
I'm gonna say the Dallas Cowboys over the Washington Commanders.
Christopher disagreeing with you. He's a Cowboys fan, and he says, "Not us, not us." I had an easier time kicking two out than putting two in.
Same.
But I'm going to go, look, you and I were texting about this earlier today. Washington was a team, first-year head coach, rookie quarterback, all that stuff.
A lot of stuff went their way.
Right. A lot of things went their way. Same with the Denver Broncos. And it came down to, like, those two in Tampa Bay, and you kicked Tampa Bay out as well. Obviously, Baker Mayfield played really well last year, but is he going to be able to duplicate that? And is the NFC South going to have a chance to get two teams into the playoffs? I don't think so. I think it's ultimately still going to come down to the winner of that division. I don't think they're going to have a wild card team. So I like Atlanta. Like you, I'm putting them in over Tampa Bay. And then the team I'm kicking out is the Broncos. I'm kicking the Broncos out. I could still, Washington would be at the bottom of my scale because, it's just, you can't just assume that with everything.
Brings up a good point. That would be three teams from the AFC West as well, with the Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos.
They all got in last year.
Yeah.
So, and that's, again, basically what they did for the most part is just look at who got in last year. And for the most part, they rubber stamped it, with the exception of they kicked out Minnesota, who of course lost Sam Darnold to Seattle. And now they're going to have JJ McCarthy as their quarterback. And I'm not just going to write him off because look, Darnold was a reclamation project last year, right? And look at the season that they had.
The head coach is the variable in that equation.
That's exactly right. Tommy says Brian is firing me. Okay. I don't know exactly why. But okay, so I'm putting Minnesota in, and it's definitely my heart that says this. And if I say this, I actually I don't have to kick Washington out because I think the NFC East, I think of the divisions, I think the East and the North have the two best chances to get three teams into the playoffs. So I'm going to say Minnesota is still going to be in, and I'm going to say that Dallas will also be in.
Nice. Okay. So, and so I want to put this out there right now. I want everyone in the chat listening. If you go back and you listen to this on podcast, however you're going to listen to this, if you put this day and time down, and the Dallas Cowboys do not make the playoffs next season, and you personally Venmo me, I will pay you $10 per person if the Cowboys don't make the playoffs. I am that confident in what they've done in terms of helping their defense, a new mentality from the head coach, what they've added on offense. I'm just going to say it. Everyone in here wants to hate on Dak Prescott, but when he's healthy, he dominates the NFC East, and he also makes the playoffs more times than he doesn't.
Go look at the record. Go look at the record.
They've done a lot to help him out. Obviously, they added George Pickens. They drafted really well.
You're actually jumping ahead a little bit because, the next question, had something to do with this. But DK says Dallas won't win 7 games. I mean, dude, they won 7 games last year with Dak Prescott out for half the season. And
they beat Washington with Cooper Rush.
Right. They beat Washington with Cooper Rush. Exactly. Like with Cooper Rush, they beat 2 playoff teams last year. Let's just do this. Fill in the blank. You fill blank that the Bears, Colts, Seahawks, Patriots, Steelers, and Jaguars all have better odds to make the playoffs than the Cowboys.
I'm pissed. That's so much disrespect. So much everyone thinks that, Schottenheimer and everything was so bad last season. Of course it was. They had issues on the offensive line. They had no running game. Dak was hurt. They had a new defensive coordinator that only lasted 1 year. They couldn't figure out how to stop the run. I trust in Matt Eberflus on defense. He's a hard-nosed defensive coordinator. I trust what they did in terms of bringing in an offensive coordinator who's going to run the ball and establish the line more. I trust that George Pickens is going to help CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. Again, I don't think I have to say much more. Google Dak Prescott versus NFC East. Google Dak Prescott making the playoffs. And that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about
getting in the playoffs. No one's saying they're going to the Super Bowl.
So this is why I'm so confident in everyone in the chat that wants to disagree with me. Write this date and time down wherever you track anything you track important, and $10 at the end of the NFL regular season will be coming your way if the Cowboys do not make the playoffs.
Look, how many quarterbacks and coaches do the Bears have to go through before people realize they're just not that good an organization?
Seriously, the Bears and Jaguars have been a train wreck the last 5 years, and they have better odds than the Dallas Cowboys.
The Indianapolis Colts have Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones battling for the starting job, and the Colts have better playoff. I realize the AFC South is bad, but Houston's going to win that division, and they're not going to get a wild card team. They're not going to be a wild card team with that quarterback situation, and the Colts have better odds than the Cowboys. Again, to your point, the Cowboys beat 3 playoff teams last year. 2 of them were with Cooper Rush at quarterback. That was with Dak Prescott out, and they won 7 games last year. They played both Eagles games with Cooper Rush. And as you said, Dak Prescott versus the NFC East, he has a winning record, head-to-head against Jalen Hurts. I think Dak Prescott has won 2 or 3 times, more games against Jalen Hurts. Hurts has maybe 2 wins against Prescott, if that. But they beat Washington with Cooper Rush as their quarterback last year. Washington made the playoffs, and they only lost by 4 points in the last game to Washington, and that was with Trey Lance as the quarterback.
It's just, you can't tell it. Looking at the Bears, the Colts, the Patriots, and the Jaguars, 4 teams that have better odds than the Dallas Cowboys. Name me one thing that they have better than the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
One thing.
And Archer says Dak has been to the playoffs 5 times in 9 seasons, so just over 50%. And the other part of that is he was out most of last season with an injury. He broke his ankle 2 years ago and was out most of the season with an injury. So when you're looking at, just over 50%, well, when he's actually been fully healthy, I think it's probably up over 80% that he's been to the playoffs. They just haven't won playoff games.
Yeah.
It's fair to say they haven't won playoff games, but all we're talking about is winning in the regular season and getting to the playoffs, which Dak and the Cowboys have actually shown they're pretty good at when they're healthy.
Regular season warriors, baby. You're talking to people who've seen the tail of the tape many times.
Yes, DK, he's weak because he had his ankle freaking snapped in half, and tore his hamstring last year.
And maybe that's what all this rides on. Maybe the NFL doesn't think Dak is going to stay healthy the whole season.
Maybe not. Christopher, come on, Christopher. You're being a little bit hard there. Even
I think he cares more
he's
than
rich
ever.
and he doesn't care anymore. He's still a great leader, man. Like, no matter what you say about him. And remember, we're only one season removed from him being the runner-up for NFL MVP. NFL MVP. That's right. And yes, they did beef up the offensive line. They did. So we'll see. Play out. The Jaguars and the Colts ahead of, and the Bears even for that matter, because how hyped did everyone get on the Bears last year just because they drafted Caleb Williams? And how did that play out? The Bears picked ahead of the Cowboys last year with everyone's, with the number one freaking draft pick.
Some of these, like the Jaguars, an abysmal organization.
Yeah.
Like, come on, that's a slap to the face.
And the head coach who doesn't even know how to say the Duval thing right. I mean, come on. Yeah. You're going to roll with that? At least say it right. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Have a great rest of – Archer slipped this one in. We'll go ahead and answer this before we end. In the college football playoff era, 4 programs have won multiple national titles. We in and we out. Over the next 11 years, fewer than 4 teams will win multiple titles. So the 4 are Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia. So over the next 11 years, I'll be in on this. That fewer than 4 teams will win multiple titles. I think we're going to see fewer teams win multiple championships, kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier in the show, the way NIL has helped spread out some of the talent. I don't think that you're going to have these teams. They're going to be, and also with multiple rounds of the playoffs, more things can happen. Like you get the wrong guy injured, and that can drastically alter your season. So
I'm in on this for predominantly the same reason. The NIL is the ultimate equalizer in today's day and age, and I'm always going to come back to it in this sort of kind of argument. Nick Saban left college football for a reason. And it's because he couldn't run the dynasty anymore in Alabama and hoard all of the top recruits in the country. That's how you win multiple national championships in a short time frame. That's no longer possible when second string can be a first string and make $1 million elsewhere.
Correct. All right. Thanks, everybody, once again. And Tommy says, what's the Duval?
Google it.
Yeah. Google Duval. What's that guy's name?
Is it Liam?
Liam. Yeah. Liam. What's his face? Google Jaguars head coach Duval.
You'll find it.
And see how he says it.
And maybe put press conference at the end.
Yeah. Hit the like button before you leave. It's all rapid fire tomorrow. We'll talk to you then on IB Nation Sports Talk.